Hello, hello! Thanks for tuning up to my live stream from Odessa's historical quarter. Today's live stream is gonna be about one site. Yeah, we're gonna dedicate the whole live stream to one site. But this is Odessa's iconic site, the National Opera and Ballet Theatre. We're literally gonna be walking around the theatre, and I'll be telling you stories about the theatre, the area around it, and I'm gonna tell you some little known facts. Let's go! The most expensive building in the old town, built just in 3 years from soft limestone, designed by Austrian architects. When it was finished in 1883, it was regarded by the theater critics as one of the most beautiful theaters in Europe. And at that time, it was competing with La Scala for the #1 position in acoustics. In fact, this is the second building of the city theater. The first one was built when Odessa was 16 years old. Just think about it. A 16-year-old city, which was being built on the frontier of the empire. At that time, it was something similar to America's Wild West. Yet the city officials allocated the money to build the first city theater. Why? Because they wanted to make the city attractive to European merchants, so that they come, stay here, and bring the money. So this is the building of the first municipal theater. It stood exactly there on the hill. The colonnade facade looked in our direction. The first city theater burned with fire. The wooden roof burned down completely, fell onto the building, destroyed the top parts of it. So the city made the decision not to rebuild the old building, but to launch a contest for the new building of the city theater. It took them 10 years to select the best project and 3 years to build the building. When the Austrian architects were working on the project, they didn't come here. So they didn't know the local landscape. Later, the project was significantly modified by the main city architects. Usually the square is crowded with people in the summer. Tourists come here for a photo shoot, and then different vendors come here to sell things to tourists. Now, of course, it's not a tourist season, and then we have the weekend lockdown, which means that the theater is closed, the restaurants work only for takeouts, and the shopping malls are closed, but they can all operate on weekdays. This is the theater fountain. All city fountains work from April till October. And there's a little secret hidden underneath the fountain. There is a huge water tank below it, which is used as an emergency water supply for the city theater. These trees are rather old, they're heritage trees. They're called the Japanese sophora. Not to confuse with the Japanese sakura. And now I'm walking towards the facade of the theater. The facade looks at the city, at the old town. In the late 1800s, when there were no buildings down this road and the trees were small, one could clearly see the Black Sea up there in front of us. So the coastline is in front of us and to the left, behind these buildings. Car sharing. Can't say that it's really popular, but it's picking up. Here's a close-up onto some parts of the old town. And this is the gorgeous facade of the Opera House. The Opera House building is the highest building in the old town. There's still a rule in this part of the old city which says that none of the buildings, new buildings, can be higher than the Opera House. In the old days, people who sat in the stalls accessed the theater from the main entrance. Students who sat all the way up in the gallery, up there under the roof, they used a more humble entrance. They used these doors, and they had a separate staircase which goes all the way up. Upper class people who could afford renting boxes for the season or who owned boxes, they used entrances on the side. Either this one or the opposite one. But it was a must in the old days to go to the city theater, as that's how it was called up until the Soviet times. The municipal theater. Locals often call this theater a cake because it's absolutely round, has lots of decorations, and because of the colors. On top of the roof are cupids, and each one is unique. Above the main entrance is Melpomene. In the Greek mythology, she is one of the muses of theater. Below her to the left is Orpheus, a Greek singer, and Terpsichore, a muse of dance. And in Latin, the phrase says the year when this theater was built, in 1887, the year when there was the fire inside, the year of the Soviet restorations in 1967. The theater you're seeing is the result of the last restoration, which finished in 2007. The original plan was to finish it in 3 years. It started in 1996. But then it went on and on. They were running out of money. Lots of the money was donated privately. So they finished just in 2007. Now walking towards the theater's facade. This is the facade and the main entrance of the theater. The anchor is the symbol of the city. And to the right is the sculpture which symbolizes comedy. And to the left, the sculpture symbolizes tragedy. And here's the view onto the city. This is the most central street. In the Soviet times it was called, of course, Lenin Street. Now it has the original name Richelieu Street. Richelieu was the first official governor of the city and a French aristocrat. In the Soviet times, all the parades started from the city theater. Up there, on the balcony, there was usually a poster with the portrait of the country leader or Lenin and the Soviet flag. And then the parades went along this road. During World War II, the two buildings, which were instead of these trees, to the left and to the right, were destroyed. So after the war, the city made the decision not to rebuild the houses, but to create two memorial walls with the lists of the locals who demonstrated extreme courage on the battlefields and were awarded with the highest ranked titles, and the heroes of labor. On every live stream and on every tour, we try going beyond the facades of the historical buildings and city sites. We want to see what's in the back of the buildings. This live stream is no exception. So we're going into the backyard of the opera theater. This is Odessa's Palais Royal, Royal Palace. There is a royal palace in Paris, which belonged to the Richelieu family, and this is Odessa's Royal Palace, which looks nothing but the palace. It's more of a park behind the opera house and behind the buildings. But in the 1800s, fashion for French was so big that when this park was created, people called it Palais Royal. It has very nice restaurants here. The best restaurant is the one in the very back. It's called Maman. They have very good local food. And this is one of the heritage trees, an old sycamore. Was planted around 1880s. This is the left wing of the opera house, and one of the entrances which was used by the rich people to access the theater. Since the entrance overlooks Palais Royal, it's called the French entrance. And the entrance on the opposite side overlooks the Englishmen's Club. We started the live stream from there. Guess how it's called? The English entrance. This is one of the newest and most expensive apartment buildings. Why is it so expensive? Because it's new, it's in the old town and right by the opera house. And imagine, people who live in here, they can listen to the rehearsals of the opera singers. I'm going to the back of the theater. This road is named after the famous Russian musician Tchaikovsky. Why? Tchaikovsky visited Odessa twice, and during one of his visits, he stayed in the hotel which was in that building in front of us. Today it consists of apartments, but originally that was the hotel. Another famous person who stayed there was Chekhov. Let me do a close-up on the plaque. That plaque over there says Chekhov. He was one of the many writers who visited Odessa many times. Usually during weekdays, this spot is packed with people who work in the city theater. But today is a weekend and lockdown, so it's empty. The buffet is a must. There's still a rule: you come to the performance a little bit earlier, and the first thing you do, you go to a buffet. The back door and the anchor above the door, and you can tell that there was something originally above the anchor. And if you think so, you're right, because this is the spot of the original city symbol. And originally there was something above the anchor, and in a little bit I'm gonna show you what was there. One of the best hotels in the city, the Duke Hotel. It's a very nice restaurant, beautiful inside, premium location, privately owned. And that building at the end of the road, let me do a close-up, with the statue of Hermes, is the City Hall. This is where we streamed yesterday. Another old sycamore. Sycamores are some of the main kinds of trees in the city. And now I'm walking towards the staircase because I want to show you something very interesting. This is one of the old staircases in the city. Was created at the end of the 1800s, and this is one of the few places in the city, in the old town, which has preserved the original symbol of the city. The symbol was published when Odessa was 3 years old. The anchor, which you can already recognize, and above the anchor is the Romanov's crown and the two-headed eagle, which were the symbols of the empire and the Tsar family. Of course, after the revolution, the Soviets got rid of the Tsar symbols, and now the city symbol consists just of the anchor. And a gorgeous sycamore tree. I promised you at the beginning of the live stream that we're gonna walk around the theater, and we literally walked around the theater. This is the English entrance and the English Men's Club where we started the live stream. I can definitely talk about the theater for another hour, but it's getting cold, so I'd better go home. But if you come to visit Odessa, do go see the theater. It has an absolutely stunning interior. If you're not a big fan of the performances, just see the theater with a tour. There are group tours, there are private tours, there are even tours which take you backstage. If you need more info, contact us in the comments. Take care. Bye-bye.